everybody, it's James Lindsay. You're listening to New Discourses Bullets, where I give a bullet point summary of a single topic out of woke Marxism that you need to know so we can defeat it. I want to draw your attention to an activist strategy book. I get asked a lot, have you read Rules for Radicals? Have you heard of Saul Alinsky? Yes, of course. Absolutely. It's a little out of date. I mean, they still use a lot of his principles. I encourage people to familiarize themselves with Rules for Radicals, but they actually have an updated guide. And my friend Vocal Distance, who many of you know on social media, that's his code name, his anonymous name on Twitter at least, has been pointing me in the direction of this book for a long time, and I try to draw attention to it sometimes. I want to draw your attention to a resource guide and book that is available online that is called Beautiful Trouble. I want to convince you that it is the update for Rules for Radicals, and I want to convince you that if you read it or go look at it, you will see a very large number of the things that you've experienced in the last several years. Their action is planned, it's coordinated, they have strategy guides. Beautiful Trouble is available online for free at beautifultrouble.org. So you can actually go there. One word, beautifultrouble.org. It is Rules for Radicals for the 21st century and for the social media era and for the everybody has a camera in their hand era. You really should go check it out. I'm going to actually drag your attention in that direction by talking about one particular page on the Beautiful Trouble website, one particular toolbox, a piece in the toolbox, I should say, which is titled, it's under the category of principles. So this is a core principle of their activism. This is, again, Beautiful Trouble. The real action, the title it says, the real action is your target's reaction. So when I'm calling about Drag Floyd, the real action is not to put drag queens in front of children, although that is, because it's in their words, preparatory introduction to alternate modes of kinship, such that kids can learn how to, in their words, live queerly, which means it is a deliberate grooming attempt. But by deliberately grooming your kids with a deliberately escalating provocation, they can try to induce a reaction, which that reaction might be an act of violence, which I'm suggesting would be a drag Floyd moment. In other words, George Floyd, 2020, all over again, but with a drag queen as the target, or maybe a trans person mistaken for a drag queen. And again, one of their core principles of their activism and one of their core books, which is available online and you can read yourself, is the real action is your target's reaction. Of course, they want to provoke a reaction. By the way, the authors of Drag Queen Story Hour also indicate that what Drag Queen Story Hour is a provocation. They say it in their own words. They know it's a provocation. It has this weird picture of all these police surrounding a guy in a panda suit, kind of like a mascot, a panda costume. It says, Anarcho Panda, a popular icon during the 2012 Quebec student protest, drew police into the awkward optics of arresting a mascot. The real action is your target's reaction. They want you to do something stupid. They want you to do something violent. They want to do something, get you to do something that they can capture on camera or make a media PR blitz about that spins a narrative in their direction. And they're very, very good at it. I've said repeatedly that in terms of operations, Antifa and all the rest of this leftist stuff is very well trained in what's called mid-level violence or engaging in mid-level provocations. That means I'm not touching you, I'm not touching you, I'm not touching you, finger 1 inch from your face. They're not touching you. Touching you would be a deliberate physical provocation. That's too far. That's not mid-level. But they're also not having their hand on their side saying it, which would be a low-level provocation and do nothing, and it wouldn't work. No, they're there waiting for you to slap their hand out of your face, and when you do, they will catch on camera that you slapped them, and that's all anybody's going to hear about it. And you're going to be 72 hours down the road explaining after the fact what really happened. And when you do that, you're explaining, which means you're losing, which means they won, because they understand that with their kind of anarchic, chaotic, destructive activism, the real action is your target's reaction. Their goal is to put you in a situation where you look stupid, bad, overreactive, toxic, dangerous, etc., and to clip it badly and to exploit the living hell out of it. But if you don't understand that they understand that their principle is to stoke a reaction, then you don't understand what they're doing. And you don't understand why I'm so insistent on talking about Drag Floyd. But the point of this is also largely to draw your attention to Beautiful Trouble at beautifultrouble.org. So go look it up. Go read how they do things. They have sections for stories, tactics, principles, theories, methodologies. They have a ton of stuff. And where did it come from? Remember I said it's updated Saul Alinsky? Who do they quote? The real action is the enemy's reaction. Saul Alinsky. That's the top thing that they have on this principle. They say when challenging a more powerful target, the key to success often isn't what you do, but how your target reacts to what you do. Therefore, anticipate your target's response and write it into your script. How can we get them to react? How can we provoke a reaction? How can we create a problem such that there's a reaction that we can turn into our solution? Problem, reaction, solution as a practical dialectic. They tell a long story here. During the Salt March of 1930, Indian independence activists famously kept walking unarmed and undeterred into brutal blows of British police. Importantly, the press were there. Activists made sure of it to document the colonial government playing the villain in predictably despicable fashion. The Indian nation rallied to the cause, world public opinion followed. So that's the idea, and obviously this can be used for noble ends and it can be used for nefarious ends. So they carry on. Organizer Saul Alinsky later coined the term political jujitsu to describe actions like this. Confrontations like the Salt March enable under-resourced activist groups to use a powerful opponent's momentum against them by provoking a reaction and then watching them fall flat, literally or figuratively, in front of the cameras. When applying this principle, it is important to understand that you can't just hope the target reacts in a way that spotlights the injustice. You want to anticipate your target's likely reactions and design your action to provoke the reaction you want, and then incorporate it into your action. If it doesn't work the first time, adjust and try again. So maybe you put a drag queen in front of a kid reading stories. And it's just a drag queen dressed kind of modestly for drag queens. Well, maybe they need to dance. Maybe the kid needs to put something in their underpants while they dance. Maybe they need to simulate sex acts. Maybe they need to start showing simulated or real body parts to children. And the escalation of the provocation goes. Maybe Antifa needs to show up to to protect the drag queens, because all of a sudden it's so dangerous that if Antifa doesn't show up with guns and black bloc, then the drag queens are in danger. It creates the image, the narrative, the view that the drag queens are in danger. And it increasingly provokes a violent response. Violence begets more violence, and they know this. You want to anticipate your target's likely reactions and design your action to provoke the reaction you want, and then incorporate it into your action. That's the theory, the principle, I should say. A good way to ensure you get a strategically useful reaction from your target is to force them into a decision dilemma where all of their available options play to your advantage. That's what it says. That's mid-level violence. Either you don't react and they have their way with somebody's kids, not yours, keep your kids at home. Or you do react and they catch you on camera at a bad moment in a bad way and spin out a narrative that's massively to their advantage. Learning to disrupt this game is crucially important to stopping the cultural revolution they're foisting upon us. You do not understand how important this is. A good way to ensure, it was in bolded pull quote. It's so important. So I'll just say it again. A good way to ensure that you get a strategically useful reaction from your target is to force them into a decision dilemma. See principle. Put your target in a decision dilemma. It's a core principle of their activism, readable in their core activism books, where all of their available options play to your advantage. When the Yes Men impersonating a spokesperson for Dow Chemical announced on BBC TV that Dow was apologizing for the Bhopal disaster, allocating $12 billion to compensate the victims, Dow's stock plummeted and they were forced to react. Dow had to issue a statement saying they were not apologizing for the Bhopal disaster and would not be compensating the victims, and that was the big tell. Here, once again, the action, happily and by design, do you hear that? Was dwarfed by the target's reaction. As the Dow Chemical case illustrates, you don't need a physical confrontation to make good theater. We're being destroyed by theater kids, by the way. In 2000, the Bush for President campaign sued activist Zach Exley. By the way, Zach Exley is a major strategist. He's behind the Justice Democrats, which means he's behind the squad. AOC, Ilhan Omar, Cori Bush, Ayanna Pressley, those frauds. The other one, whatever the fifth one is, the fifth wheel. Zach Exley is the brains behind their operation. Zach Exley works with the Open Society Foundation, or at least used to. He is a communist organizer. And here he is. How did he get to where he was? In 2000, the Bush for President campaign sued activist Zach Exley and tried to shut down his prank website, gwbush.com, a domain Exley had managed to buy before the campaign had. The press picked up the story, and with each new legal attack, Bush at one point saying there ought to be limits to freedom, that's a quote, there was another wave of press sympathetic to the site and combative toward a hapless dolt who somehow ended up being president for 8 years. Joke's on them, he was one of their guys. A sorry reminder that even the cleverest one-off tactic does not a successful campaign make. Contrary to popular belief, when one of the big boys threatens you, and if you use a company's trademark in action, for example, action means activism, by the way, mass action, it's communist action. If you use a company's trademark in action, for example, you can count on a cease and desist letter. So giving people blatant things they can do. When one of the big boys threatens you, you should celebrate. You are the David to their Goliath, and now you have the upper hand. This is all in exclamation marks, by the way. Take their best quotes, weave them into a press release, and voila, you've cast them in your play. In the timeless logic of jujitsu, which basically none of these people know, you have borrowed some of their power, and if coverage goes your way, you have used their offensive momentum to flip them on their backs. Everyone loves it when Goliath bites the dust. Learn more, Saul Alinsky's 12 Rules for Radicals cheat sheet. Saul Alinsky, Community Organizing and Rules for Radicals. You must go to Beautiful Trouble if you want to learn how to tactically deal with and understand what the woke are doing, how they're taking over our society, how they keep flummoxing people, how they keep getting narrative wins, even though that's starting to falter. We can make them falter so much faster if you go to beautifultrouble.org and understand their playbook, which is online. Go download it. Go buy the book. It's a physical book, too. It's all there. Like I said, stories, tactics, currency hacking, hoax, identity correction, infiltration, media jacking, theories, action logic, direct action, ethical spectacle, Hammock and Hamas, the tactics of everyday life, principles, escalate strategically, like they do with Drag Queen Story Hour. Joy is a revolutionary force. Well, their drag queens are always seeming to be so happy. Lead with sympathetic characters. I don't know how a drag queen's a sympathetic character, but they paint him up as a victim and relate them to trans people and so on falsely. Take risks, but take care. That's part of the strategic. Think narratively, because they're weaving narratives. Methodologies has the action star. You should go to this site. It's in multiple languages. You can find all kinds of things. They have books. They have strategy cards, action lab, training toolbox, beautifultrouble.org. You need to know about it. You need to understand it. You need to incorporate it in your understanding of what we're fighting. And in this case, you also need to understand this principle. Their greatest action is your reaction. They have gamed it out. They have thought about it. They provoke specifically to get it in a particular way, and they are counting on you to give it to them to exploit it. This is why I'm completely convinced I'm right about Drag Floyd, besides the fact that their reaction turned out to be my action when I said it. And we can know that this is deliberate and happy or whatever, happily and deliberately gamed out strategy to do massive damage to our country. So go check out Beautiful Trouble, understand their principles, understand their tactics, start making people able to see them by explaining them, sharing them, articulating them, making noise about them, and thus diffusing their power.